knowing that we have a personal tie, it was kind of fun that brought us together. But do you want to share a little bit more how you think your Midwest upbringing prepared you for success?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I still spend a lot of time back in North Dakota. But I think my Midwest upbringing, and not just Midwest upbringing, but I had pretty humble, upbringing, and I think I've done a decent job of just remembering people are people. And one of the things I say is that if you went to ask, our PE investors, right, the CEO of our PE firms versus a Back on My Feet member, which is a nonprofit that I ran and worked with the homeless, my friends, anybody, like, tell me about Ann, I think they would give you the same exact answer. So I sort of learned not to put on a show for different types of people, that like, I am who I am, and I embrace who I am, and I'm going to treat you the same regardless of who you are. And I think that's part of a big part of my upbringing.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely inspire me. I'm still coming to that. I came from a very corporate background where, it was very much more polished in a way where I think our chief people officer at the time had said, if I see you at a bar or I see you at the office, you should be the same person. I was like, oh my gosh, I am two totally different people. So I've really been working on that the last couple of years, but it's great that you could, really inspire others to, I think that way and drive to just be the same person who you are through and through. So that's great.
Yeah, I think it can be exhausting in other ways. And I realize people have different jobs than I do, and they might need to have a different, approach with that, whether they have a super analytical job and it's sort of heads down versus maybe a little bit of who they are. But as an entrepreneur, the advice I give to entrepreneurs a lot too is you have to be who you are, because authentic sells. And also people do not like when they find out certain things about you, that you present yourself in this way, but you're really this way. It's a really hard pill for people to swallow that. So I've just been like, I don't want to have to worry about two different images, because that can be, again, exhausting, confusing, and it's just not something that I think resonates with people.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I know that we barely remember probably when we were both at the same in-home daycare when we're like 4 or 5 years old, right? But having that same tie to Bismarck, it's always fun to have the tie with people from Bismarck, because I think you've traveled the world, you've met people from all over. And I always joke that North Dakota, even saying North Dakota, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never met anyone from North Dakota. I'm like, oh, bucket list item checked off, let alone when you run into people across the globe and realize you're both connected from North Dakota. So I think that's kind of a fun little factor, fun little gathering point. So just to jump more into it, so you gave a TED talk about your upbringing. So kind of going back to that, and there was a pivotal moment when you're 16 where you learned your father was an addict, at the same time addicted to gambling. And like from an image perspective, I'm sure it was heartbreaking and like a life-changing moment. So how do you think that also shaped you, when you talk about your humble upbringing as a young adult?
I think it shaped me that, having some realization that not, and I'm been a big believer in this saying that not everybody has the same opportunity. I think it's why I advocate for so many people who haven't had and haven't been afforded the same opportunities as maybe other people who've been super successful. And that rocked me. I mean, listen, my dad hung the moon, and I thought I had a stable, family unit. And when you realize wait, my dad's just not going to live here anymore. And it happened so fast. It was very, very jarring. And I carried around a lot of resentment, and I channeled that resentment toward my mom, because it was her decision to not have, be with my dad, and she couldn't do it. And I'm just like, this is marriage. You made this commitment. I mean, I had a 16-year-old view of this, right? And obviously had selfish interest of wanting my dad around. So it was super challenging, for me. And I carried that for years. And it really motivated me though, because I'm like, I'm going to have this perfect life. This isn't going to happen to me. And I sort of went down this road of in a hurry to grow up. I was like, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to be happy, damn it. And then, getting into my 20s, I was like, I don't even know if I want all those things. And have I been fooling myself? And that's when, after 2 years of really trying to sort out, then what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? That's when Back on My Feet happened. And the big moment for me of really reflecting on my upbringing and all of the pain that caused. And I was like, you have a choice with pain. You can either let it destroy you and keep you mad and angry, or you can channel it and use it for good. And I didn't know that was an option before Back on My Feet, until meeting these guys and discovering all of this stuff I feel. And I say this a lot, Stephanie, but like when I met these guys in that shelter, I had felt like I had found my people that didn't even know I was looking for, because I felt so connected to my dad through them. And I cared immediately about their success, their future, their happiness. I wanted them to be loved. I wanted them to be proud and happy. And it was sort of this weird thing of like, I was never really able to help my dad back then because I just didn't know any better. And I felt like I got a second chance around at it.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I mean, I think and to see that you can channel that in the right way to really help a lot of other people, I think that takes a very tough mindset to be able to do that, and one that's very resilient compared to, being able to hold on to that anger or resentment. I think there's a quote I read that said, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And It's something where it's just being able to channel that, though, I know can be hard, especially to kind of move beyond, even though it probably comes in waves or revisits you every once in a while as you're having some of those emotional connections.
Yeah. And I think also like this, I get this from my mom, I think, but like, I love how introspective, like as humans, we have the capacity to be, if we want it, right? Learning, reading, discovering, understanding why we do the things we do, why we think the things we do, where our insecurities come from. And if you really do that work, it's really fascinating to check your own behaviors, right? Of like, why do I do that? Why do I have the same pattern here? Where does that come from? So I think that stuff's super fascinating. Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like your mom was a pretty big influence. So between her and like Bismarck, like how did that prepare you for leadership? And then, I know we throw around entrepreneurship and everything, but you are truly a serial entrepreneur. So how did that help, at such a young age, being able to channel all of that and then be able to leverage that, creating back on my feet?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to having some humility and not having a whole lot of hubris, right? Like, again, when you have humble beginnings, you really don't have an ego. And I truly just wanted to help people. And I think that really served me well. I wasn't trying to trick people. I just was like, how do I help these individuals in the way that I feel like I know how? And my mom is fiercely independent. She was a teacher. She raised 3 kids. She always had dinner on the table. And my dad just was just wasn't in the best place. And I love my dad. We have a great relationship now. But I don't, he didn't sort of participate in the way that I think my mom wanted to. And I think that became a self-fulfilling prophecy of then my mom becoming controlling and that pushing my dad away more. And it just, when there's a relationship, there's always 2 people involved in its demise. I totally believe that it's never just one person, regardless of who did what. So seeing my mom just be fiercely independent has been a big part of my success. And I just I can do this.